Content warning, this episode contains discussion of the murder of children, as well as possible physical abuse.
So we are recording this on Wednesday, April 5th, 2023. And earlier this morning, there was a very serious filing in the ongoing case of Richard Allen in connection to the Delphi murders. So we thought we'd come and tell you all about it.
My name is Anya Kane. I'm a journalist.
And I'm Kevin Greenlee. I'm an attorney.
We first connected while looking into the Burger Chef murders, an Indiana cold case. Together, we built a spreadsheet documenting hundreds of cases of restaurant-related homicides. That original spreadsheet gave way to our podcast, the Murdersheet.
Now we maintain that same research-centric, investigative approach as we look into all sorts of homicides, including unsolved cases, historical crimes, and, of course, restaurant murders.
We don't just chat about the headlines. Our podcast is a platform for our journalism. The Murdersheet focuses on investigative reporting, thoughtful analysis, thorough research, and in-depth interviews. We're the Murdersheet, and this is...
The Delphi murders. Richard Allen in prison. I think before we get into the substance of this filing, there's an old saying that a picture is worth 1,000 words. Richard Allen's attorneys, Brad Rozzi and Andy Baldwin, when they filed this motion, they also included a couple of pictures. Can you describe those pictures?
These photographs are each labeled Exhibit A and Exhibit B. I will actually discuss Exhibit B first and basically describe to you the visual that we're seeing in this image. It was filed on April 5th, 2023 at 10:39 a.m. in the Carroll County Circuit Court. And basically it is an image of Richard Allen, or also known as Rick Allen. It's sort of taken from below. He is sitting in what appears to be a chair on some sort of patio deck. You can see wooden planks beneath him and what I believe to be his house in the background. This appears to have likely been taken at his Delphi residence prior to his arrest. And it's not clear when this photo was taken, but he's essentially sitting in this chair. He's wearing a lilac-colored polo shirt and a hat with a visor. He appears healthy. Notably, there's a large, thanks to forced perspective, there's a dog on his lap. I believe it's a Chihuahua. And he's holding it. He and the dog are both looking off to kind of towards the upper right corner of the image. And he appears healthy. He's a middle-aged man. He's got facial hair. His facial hair is neatly trimmed. It's brown with some flecks of white in more the beard area. And I would say he has a roundish face and, certainly appears like a relatively normal, healthy middle-aged man.
What's shown in the other picture?
The other image, aka Exhibit A, is Richard Allen also seated. This photo is taken from above. And like the other one, this was filed at the same exact time in Carroll County Circuit Court. In this, it appears to be an image of Richard Allen after his incarceration. He's sitting in what looks like a bit of a conference room. You can see sort of like a gray navy-ish rug, kind of a blank gray wall behind him, along with a waste bin with the plastic bag inside of it. And he is wearing a prison uniform, what appears to be sort of a red jumpsuit. There's sort of orange. It's unbuttoned around his chest. Some sort of orange peeking out from around his waistband, and also kind of a beige t-shirt beneath. And he looks terrible. I mean, to be candid.
He looks like he's lost a lot of weight.
Yeah, he looks like he's lost an extreme amount of weight. His face is much more sunken than it was previously. His beard is grown out, although it is still relatively, I would say, neatly trimmed, but less so than before. Instead of having just the goatee mustache situation, it's more of a full-fledged beard. His hair is very closely cut around his head. And, his face just looks very sunken. His arms look a lot skinnier than they did. His frame appears more emaciated. He's got, kind of wet stains on his shirt that he's kind of seems to be gesturing at, and his hands are cuffed in front of him and chained to his waist. You can see a padlock, cuffs, things like that. So I think what these images are meant to do is sort of illustrate a physical change in Richard Allen prior to his incarceration and post-incarceration. And they're kind of meant to tell a story that the defense wants to tell about, how this is affecting their client, essentially.
Yes. The motion is called an emergency motion to modify a safekeeping order. And it starts by going back to the beginning of this case as it relates to Richard Allen. We all remember that there was a period after he was arrested and charged where he did not have counsel. And the defense attorneys remind us all of that fact in the opening of this motion. And they point out that prior to them coming onto the case, prior to Richard Allen having someone there to argue for him, custody of him was turned over to the Indiana Department of Correction. And that is unusual because typically when a person is arrested and faces charges, they don't go into the Indiana Department of Correction. They're usually placed in a county jail.
For example, we've been covering extensively the Kagan Klein case, and viewers who listen and listeners who listen to us frequently would note that he's been incarcerated at the Miami County Jail, not a prison, because he previously was awaiting trial. Now he's since pled guilty, but the reason for that is, that's the distinction usually between a jail and a prison.
And generally speaking, the conditions at a jail are better than the conditions at a prison. And that is because when a person is in jail, typically they have not been found guilty of a crime. After a person is found guilty of a crime and is given a sentence to serve, that's when they're typically sent to a prison. And again, going back to those early days of the case, we know that after custody of Mr. Allen was turned over to the Indiana Department of Correction, he was taken to an undisclosed facility. And I believe this is the first time that it is officially confirmed what that facility is. I think we've heard it behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But
we had some tipsters let us know that it was Westville, but
yeah,
now we officially know.
So at the bottom of page 1, Brad Rozzi writes, Mr. Allen is currently incarcerated in the Westville Correctional Facility where he's been detained since November 2022. And again, we believe that's the first official confirmation of that fact.
Now we're going to read paragraphs 5 and 6 on the second page of this motion. 5. The Westville Correctional Facility is a maximum security prison operated by the Indiana Department of Corrections, wherein thousands of individuals convicted of the most serious crimes, such as murder, rape, robbery, and child molesting, are confined as a result of their convictions. To the best of counsel's knowledge, Westville Correctional Facility does not routinely house offenders awaiting trial, who are presumed innocent, as the presumption should be with Mr. Allen. 6. It is further noteworthy that Mr. Allen has been continuously assigned to a separate maximum security segregation unit within the Westville Correctional Facility, wherein the most dangerous offenders are held. Counsel has investigated and confirmed with prison officials that said unit routinely houses individuals serving sentences of life without parole and others who have committed some of the most heinous crimes known to our society, or have been transferred to this unit after committing further crimes within the Department of Corrections. Counsel was informed by prison employees that said employees were not aware of any other circumstances wherein a human, facing trial under circumstances such as these, has been housed in said facility. Finally, counsel has discovered that Westville Correctional Facility has been the center of much attention in the recent past in matters involving unequal and inhumane treatment of offenders, and there is a citation for an Indianapolis Star article with the headline, "Inmate kept in solitary will get $400,000 from state," lawyers say.
So basically, it's making it pretty clear that not only is he being kept in prison as opposed to jail, he's being kept in a prison that's designed for the very worst offenders.
Yeah, and I will note that a lot of people will probably be thinking, well, he's accused of brutally murdering 2 girls, so that fits. And we hear you, but he's not been convicted of that at this time. He's presumed innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah, it's very important to stress that innocent until proven guilty is not just a catchy phrase. It means something. You as a listener, if you want to believe someone is guilty before they receive the verdict of the jury, you're allowed to. But under the eyes of the law, a person cannot be treated as if he is guilty until he has, in fact, been found guilty by a judge or jury.
That's even if there's a lot of evidence against them or if the crimes they're accused of are particularly heinous. It applies regardless. Prior to a guilty plea or a conviction, it's just the way things are done, and that's how our system works. And so basically what Mr. Rozzi is saying in this filing is that he's already sort of being treated like he's guilty by being shunted away to Westville. And within Westville, the most intense, I guess, block of cells in terms of, just the kind of the worst of the worst, essentially.
At this point, Rozzi cites a lot of relevant cases. So obviously he's done quite a bit of research on that. Instead of going into all the details about the specific cases he cites, we are going to skip ahead to paragraph 8.
Counsel recently visited the prison and was denied of his request to inspect his client's cell block and living circumstances. Despite this, counsel has reason to believe that Mr. Allen has been required to endure the following conditions over the course of his 5+ month detainment at the facility. A. Mr. Allen has been entombed in a cell as small as 6 feet in width by 10 feet in length, a space no larger than that of a dog kennel. B. Mr. Allen is sleeping on a pad on a concrete floor. C. Mr. Allen is afforded showers only 1 to 2 times per week. D. Mr. Allen is required to wear the same clothes, including underwear, for days and days on end, all of which are soiled, stained, tattered, and torn. E. Mr. Allen, who is a constitutionally innocent man and maintains his factual innocence as well, has not been afforded any opportunity to visit his wife or other family members during the last 5 months of incarceration, during which time he has been subjected to conditions akin to those of a prisoner of war. F. Mr. Allen is allowed only an electronic tablet through which he can make calls to family members, all of which is monitored by prison officials, with the cost of all phone calls being borne by Rick and his family. G. Mr. Allen is routinely supervised by other inmates, companions as referred to within the confines of the prison, who sit on watch outside of his cell door on a daily basis. H. Mr. Allen is afforded very little, if any, recreation time outside of his cold concrete and metal quarters. I. Attorneys for Mr. Allen delivered nearly 1,000 pages of police reports to Mr. Allen on Friday, March 24th, 2023, with the intention of seeking their client's cooperation in his own defense. As of Monday, April 3rd, 2023, said information has yet to be provided to Mr. Allen.
These are incredibly serious allegations.
This is obviously an attorney writing this who sort of is savvy about what is going to not only resonate with the court, but also this is a filing that's going public. This is going to be out to the media as well. And when you're comparing Allen's treatment to that of a prisoner of war or a dog in a kennel, that is salient, and that is also going to speak to the public and further your points, essentially.
Yeah, especially since you're also making the point to the public and to the court, obviously, that the man receiving this treatment from the state is, in the eyes of the law, an innocent man.
And I think it speaks to a savvy on the part of the defense attorneys that they are bound by this gag order, as is the prosecution and other entities here. But when it comes to filings like this, they let the filings tell the story for them, in a way.
They don't need to go out and give interviews to the media.
No. And I think these are, in my opinion, I'm sharing my opinion right now, these are pretty serious and disturbing charges on the part of Allen's treatment. I want to note one caveat that is coming to mind for me right now. Obviously, we've not, directly confirmed any of this ourselves. We knew about the Westville element, but all this other stuff is concerning. Part of me also wonders if some of these elements are endemic to the prison system in Indiana rather than treatment being meted out to Richard Allen specifically, as in, his family having to pay for calls, things like that, bad living conditions. That's not to minimize what's being charged here, because I think the key thing that people need to remember is that he is constitutionally innocent right now. He's not been convicted of a crime. So the fact that you have somebody who's not been convicted in these conditions is obviously, as Mr. Rozzi is writing here, problematic in and of itself. Even if you could argue that some of these prison conditions may be something that all prisoners are dealing with to a certain extent in high security facilities in Indiana, which is still disturbing, to say the least. Hey everyone, it's Anya and Kevin.
We're both longtime true crime obsessives. That's why the Murder Sheet emphasizes research, interviews, and digging for the truth. We've led the national media on major crime stories, providing scoops and exclusives to our audience. We've run interviews with some fascinating figures, and have more planned ahead. We're proud of the work we do here, and we are so thankful to all of our listeners for making it possible.
If you really enjoy this show and are looking for an opportunity to get even more content, consider joining our Patreon. For $5, you basically get 2 extra episodes a month. What's more, these aren't just any episodes. They're 2 very cool live episodes. You can join in and watch live, weigh in with questions or comments, the works. Those episodes tend to be much looser in terms of our style and format. We'll go behind the scenes on our journalistic process, tell anecdotes about some of the wild things we've seen while reporting, give you our opinions, and try to answer all of the questions you've always wanted to ask us about the cases you care about.
By joining, you'd also be helping directly support us. Podcasting is a tough business for independent voices. The Murder Sheet does not belong to a network, and we're not owned by a mega corporation. So we really appreciate our Patreons for helping to support us.
If you're interested, just go to patreon.com/murdersheet and subscribe at the $5 level. Again, that's patreon.com/murdersheet.
And I also think it's worth noting that even though it was mentioned last on the list, I think that one thing that will likely jump out to Judge Gold is the fact that, I'll read it again, attorneys for Mr. Allen delivered nearly 1,000 pages of police reports to Mr. Allen on March 24th with the intention of seeking their client's cooperation in his own defense. As of Monday, April 3rd, said information is yet to be provided to Mr. Allen. Basically, they're charging there that the prison officials, whoever's making decisions at the prison, is actively working to deprive Richard Allen of his right to consult with his attorneys and prepare his own defense. And that's a very sacred right in our criminal justice system. If you're charged with something, you have the right to work with your lawyers for your defense. And they're alleging here that they are depriving Richard Allen of that right, which is disturbing as the other allegations are. That allegation is especially disturbing for me.
And will also be, I'm sure, disturbing for Judge Gull and the sort of people on the legal side of things here, because as you said, the other elements that are more of going towards bad living conditions are certainly disturbing and, raise a lot of concerning questions. But when it actually gets to Allen's ability to defend himself in trial from these really serious charges, I think anybody, whether you think he's innocent, whether you think he's guilty, whether your mind's not made up and you're sort of like us where you're waiting to hear more information, I think everybody wants this trial to go off properly and with everybody able to make the best of the case before them. And by doing so, I think the system, the adversarial system of our justice system essentially works best when everybody's bringing their A game, to speak somewhat facetiously, when everybody's doing the most with what they've got. And if the defendant is not able to really engage with the case against him, that's not going to happen. And that's concerning. We're going to jump on to the next two paragraphs, 9 and 10. 9. The location of Mr. Allen's detention is such that he is isolated geographically, not only from his family, but also from his attorneys, who are required to travel for hours to speak with him in confidence regarding his case. Said visits also require making logistical arrangements with prison officials in advance of visits. And there's a citation there to, counsel would note that Westville prison officials have been more than accommodating and courteous to counsel during visits with Mr. Allen, other than the recent denial of our request to visit Allen's cell, despite the harsh and unreasonable conditions under which Mr. Allen is currently detained. 10. It is difficult, if not impossible, for Mr. Allen's attorneys to share confidential and sensitive information with Mr. Allen due to the logistical challenges associated with Mr. Allen's segregation and isolation, to the extent that Mr. Allen is being deprived of his constitutional right to assist in his defense. In contrast, the state of Indiana, through its prosecutorial and law enforcement divisions, sit in the comfort of their own command center planning and preparing to prosecute Mr. Allen to the fullest extent of the law.
So that also, those two paragraphs also go to the heart of Richard Allen's rights to prepare his own defense.
And it's interesting because they, in that little citation, it kind of may escape people when they're reading on the first try. They're not throwing Westville necessarily, the Westville officials under the bus here, because I think otherwise you might say, well, maybe the Westville officials aren't doing their jobs and facilitating things properly. They're saying, no, they actually are being pretty helpful, with the exception of this one thing where they wouldn't do what we asked. So I think that's also notable, that they're trying to kind of keep the pressure on that this is a systemic issue, as opposed to people not doing their jobs properly in the prison. So to give you all a sense of where exactly Westville is, it is about an hour and 34 minutes directly to the north of Delphi, essentially. It's, for those of you who aren't familiar with Indiana, it's up at the very tippity-top northern part of the state, not too far away from Lake Michigan. So if Richard Allen's family is originally from Delphi, no idea if they're still based there at this point. I imagine that's not necessarily the case, but that's where it is from Delphi. We know that Brad Rozzi is based in Logansport, Indiana, and it's about an hour and 26 minutes away. And as we talked about in the episodes focusing on Andy Baldwin, his criminal defense team is the main flagship location is in Franklin, Indiana, which is 3 hours away. So all of that, is a pretty intense commute to a certain extent for going to have these important discussions with the clients. So that's kind of putting that into context.
Let's get back to the filing and read the next couple of paragraphs. I will note that at one point in one of these paragraphs, there's an obvious typo in regards to a date, which we will correct as we read it.
11. In sum, Mr. Allen is being treated far less favorably than a convicted person, many of which are housed in less secure areas of the prison, and are offered programming, therapy and mental health services, routine recreation, and contact visits with family and friends. 12. To further complicate matters, Mr. Allen has suffered from depression dating back to his early years. Upon his incarceration, Mr. Allen was presumably evaluated and medicated by prison medical staff. Up until a visit with Mr. Allen on April 4th, 2023, Counsel for Mr. Allen found him to be polite, communicative with great eye contact, generally responsive to our question, and exhibiting of a good sense of humor on occasion, in spite of his false arrest and circumstances. However, Mr. Allen's deteriorating physical condition has been observed by counsel dating back to the beginning of the new year. As recently as Friday, March 24th, 2023, attorney Andrew Baldwin met with Mr. Allen with optimistic news about the direction of the case, and Mr. Allen was inquisitive about the information, was thankful about the information, and optimistic about the information. Only 10 days later, April 3rd, 2023, attorneys for Mr. Allen observed a steep decline in Mr. Allen's demeanor, ability to communicate, ability to comprehend, and ability to assist in his defense. Simply put, this version of Richard Allen was a very different version than counsel for Mr. Allen had interacted with over the past 5 months. Mr. Allen appeared to be suffering from various psychotic symptoms which counsel would describe as schizophrenic and delusional. Counsel further believes that in our April 4th, 2023 interaction, Mr. Allen seems to be suffering from memory loss and is demonstrating an overall inability to communicate rationally with counsel and family members. Counsel experienced these symptoms firsthand upon visiting Mr. Allen on Monday, April 4th, 2023. 13. Mr. Allen's physical condition is deteriorating rapidly. Attached Exhibit A is a photo of Mr. Allen taken by counsel at the correctional facility on April 4th, 2023. Said photo reflects the significant toll of his current incarceration on his physical person and, by extension, his mental capacity. By contrast, see attached Exhibit B, which reflects his condition a year or two prior to his incarceration. The conditions under which Mr. Allen has been forced to endure are akin to that of a prisoner of war.
So that's the background on the pictures that we were describing earlier. And I think that's really something that jumps out at me. I believe this is the second time in the filing they've used the phrase prisoner of war to describe the conditions Richard Allen is being kept in. These are serious allegations, and it is easy to imagine that if a person was kept in those conditions for an extended time, it almost seems designed to make him deteriorate both physically and emotionally.
Although I will say one thing that I do have a small query with, I guess, is the strategic move of mentioning his declining mental state and specifically alleging psychotic or schizophrenic symptoms. Is that, I think some people are going to look at that and wonder, well, is that because of what's happening and the stress and just because he's in these horrible conditions, or is that something that afflicts him regardless? And is that something that could play a role into what he's accused of doing?
Oh, so you're suggesting that may possibly be a defense?
I'm not suggesting that it's going to be a defense. I'm just questioning the strategic move of releasing that. I mean, I think it's probably a measure where these attorneys are very smart and they're thinking, how do we convey how bad this situation is and be honest while doing that? And I think that's fair. I'm trying to look at this from all angles. And when they're saying, and I think the thing is, though, I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, and I would be very interested, and we'll probably reach out to some folks just to have maybe some on-background discussions. Maybe there is some sort of psychological function where somebody who is normally never psychotic or schizophrenic or having delusions, it's possible to slide down that slope, I guess, if you're under a lot of stress or in really bad conditions. I would be curious to hearing from mental health professionals who can speak to that, because we can't. I guess I'm just looking at everything from a very strategic perspective. Okay, like what benefits the prosecution? What benefits the defense? And I see where this benefits the defense because they're saying that basically they're torturing this guy, essentially, reading between the lines. But from the prosecution side, I wonder if this will make people think, well, could that have happened before without him being in prison?
Well, that's certainly fair to bring up. And I would note that earlier in this document, they do refer to his arrest as a false arrest, and there's a reference to him being factually innocent.
Yeah, I don't believe that they're going to be going for an insanity. I believe that these attorneys believe that he's factually innocent. That's what he seems to be going for. And I think that there's nothing in here to indicate anything else. I think they're just noting the mental health decline because they're saying that things are so bad that it's affecting him in this very extreme way. And it's also underscoring not only is he not getting thousands of pages of, the case, they're also noting that we can't even really talk to him when he's like this because he's not rational. So it's underscoring some of the constitutional issues here. But I guess I'm just flagging that because
I understand.
I could see people reading that two ways.
Anya's going to read in a moment paragraph number 14. In the middle of the paragraph, there is a case citation, which she will not read.
It's a Bell v. Wolfish for all you legal people out there. And a lot of numbers. 14. The test for determining the constitutionality of treatment of pretrial detainees alleged to deprive them of liberty without due process of law is whether those conditions amount to punishment of the detainee. Here, Mr. Allen is being punished to the fullest extent of the law. The conditions he is currently enduring have been thrust upon him without any judicial analysis of the need for such a deprivation of his liberty. Further, counsel is unaware of any facts outside of those generally alleged in the sheriff's safekeeping petition which support the need to detain Mr. Allen on what could casually be referred to as death row.
So basically what they're saying there is we can all conceive in our own imaginations circumstances where it might be warranted to keep someone under these harsh conditions while he is awaiting trial. We can all use our imaginations and come up with scenarios that would do that. But he's saying whatever those scenarios may be, no one has ever established that any of those facts which might justify this sort of treatment exist in this case. No judge said, yes, you have to treat him this way. This was something that the state just apparently decided to do unilaterally at a time when Richard Allen did not even have a lawyer. And if you remember back at the time, a lot of people, including us, were concerned that he had this extended time without an attorney and that his rights could potentially be being violated. And this certainly would seem to be the case when you consider these allegations.
15. Approximately 2 months prior to the filing of this petition, Attorney Rozzi was able to secure a more traditional bed space in the Cass County Jail, a newly erected modern jail facility with the most advanced security measures, located directly across the street from Attorney Rozzi's office and only approximately 20 miles from the Carroll County Courthouse. Said modification of Mr. Allen's incarceration would result in a more humane living environment, in which Mr. Allen would be afforded immediate access to his attorneys, and more importantly, would allow Mr. Allen to have regular contact visits with his family, i.e. this detention circumstance would afford Mr. Allen due process of law. Under these circumstances, Mr. Allen would be treated like other inmates awaiting trial in the criminal justice system, as opposed to being punished based only on the merits of untested charging information and probable cause affidavit. 16. In the process of facilitating Mr. Allen's removal from Westville Correctional Facility, Attorney Rozzi communicated with Prosecutor Nicholas McClelland, who articulated that he had no objection to a modification of Mr. Allen's detention circumstances to a facility closer to Carroll County. 17. Attorney Rozzi was recently informed that the Carroll County Sheriff's Department declined Attorney Rozzi's request to have Mr. Allen removed from the harsh conditions under which he is currently detained to a more traditional county jail near Mr. Allen's attorneys and family. Mr. Allen asserts that said denial is a deliberate attempt to impose conditions upon him that are intended to frustrate his purpose in defending against the charged allegations and create a hardship on him which would drive any human to mental breakdown. Said approach to his pretrial detention is a direct infringement on his Sixth Amendment rights under the U.S. Constitution.
This is very interesting to me. First of all, I'll note that in paragraphs 15 and 16, Brad Rozzi is doing what a good attorney does, where you try to answer a person's objections even before they get a chance to raise them. You can imagine reading this, he's saying, well, Richard Allen needs to be in a better place than Westville. People might say, well, where is such a place, and how can you even get him there? And he says, well, guess what, folks? I have a place, it's all arranged, and it's convenient, and it would work. And people might say, well, what does the prosecutor think about all of this? And the prosecutor, Nick McClelland, has no objection to this whatsoever. But then we get to paragraph 17, where it's revealed that the Carroll County Sheriff's Department is the one that objects to this. And this is interesting because I think for a lot of this brings to mind, again, something that happened around the time of the arrest of Richard Allen, was the whole business with a sheriff's election going on. And there have been some suggestions and allegations that what happened in terms of the timing of the arrest was somehow related to the sheriff's election. We haven't seen any proof.
No, and I think I personally, based on the lack of proof, don't believe that that was a huge influence.
Innocent until proven guilty. We've not seen any hard evidence of that. But it does seem worth noting that it's the sheriff's department who is objecting.
Well,
to
I
that.
think the pattern there is, unfortunately, that's not great optics. Let's just be honest. Optics are not everything. You can be doing something that doesn't look ideal and it's not nefarious. Okay? But at the same time, it's probably best to consider optics when it's a very high-profile case, because if you don't, then I think you get into a situation where people start saying that they're losing trust in some of the institutions, and you kind of get a lot of conspiracy theories on your hand. Let's just state that. I mean, that's been a problem in this case from very early on, I think, because of an information vacuum and because of bad optics again and again and again. And I don't necessarily expect a small county to have a lot of media training or savvy, but I just think at this point, if their opposition to him being transferred, it boils down to some sort of like, well, we don't want to play ball with the defense kind of thing, it's probably best to just allow it to happen, because it sort of seems like, as outlined in this motion, that there's a lot of good reasons for it to happen. You know what I mean? Like, it just kind of like, you don't have to fight everything when fighting things just ultimately makes people question why is there a real reason from the sheriff's department? And of course, they're bound by the gag order too. So we'd love to ask them and get their side of it, but they can't talk to anybody right now. So it's like, by objecting to this so strenuously, and not even, even the prosecutor is okay with it, you're kind of getting into a situation where then it's kind of like, what's going on there? And again, to be blunt, especially when you couple this with the timing of the arrest and the sheriff's election, and now it's the sheriffs who don't want him to be moved to a more convenient spot, it doesn't look good. And certainly, if the sheriff's department is aware of some compelling reason where Richard Allen needs to be kept in circumstances akin, to quote Mr. Rozzi, akin to a prisoner of war, they should communicate those reasons to the court publicly as soon as possible. The amount of secrecy in this case has not helped Carroll County. I'm going to say this. My guess, because I tend to favor what is the boring answer, my guess is that McClelland is aware that Rozzi and Baldwin are going to bring their A game when they're asking for something and potentially file an motion and make their case really clear. So him saying, yeah, I don't object, is kind of an acknowledgement of that, and an acknowledgement of like, well, yeah, that is abnormal, so let's do it the normal way, right? He's an attorney, he gets how this works. And I could see a situation arising where leaders within the sheriff's department kind of unilaterally are like, oh no, like if they want that, we don't want that. Just almost as like kind of like a negotiation strategy of kind of playing hardball. And that's not nefarious. The problem is picking your battles can be an important thing, especially when you're dealing with two attorneys who really know what they're doing and are outlining a pretty horrifying living circumstance for this person who's not yet been convicted. And so maybe in circumstances like this, that's not the battle you want to pick with these attorneys. You want to save that opposition and that conflict for a situation where perhaps you have a better case. And so that tends to be what I think is likely or possibly going on here. If anybody knows any more in-depth reasoning beyond this that they want to share with us, send us a tip. We'd be interested, but yeah.
Yeah, we'd been hearing some details behind the scenes, stories about how he was allegedly being treated that we hadn't been able to verify. So if there's more people out there who have information, please.
Yeah, whether you know about conditions in Westville, whether you know about anything going on with Richard Allen and his contact with his family or anything like that, whether you know about inner workings within Carroll County about how things are being held. Any information we can get would be deeply helpful, and we'll keep you confidential. We're not going to get you named and get you in trouble. We just want to know what's going on.
And again, before we move on, I just want to stress that these allegations go straight to the heart of the most basic rights we all enjoy as citizens. And so if Richard Allen ends up going to trial and being convicted, it would potentially be grounds for an appeal if the appeals court looks at this and agrees with Mr. Rozzi and Mr. Baldwin that Richard Allen had been denied his constitutional rights to help the defense prepare for the trial.
And that kind of hits upon one major thing that I think we should discuss. We talked about in the Idaho case, the Brady-Giglio rules, and essentially that for a defense counsel, winning is everything. You win. You fight to win. For a prosecutor, you're looking for the truth. You're looking for what can you prove? What can you do with the facts? And I think that's very important to remember when we're looking at this situation. Prosecutor McClelland is going to be looking at this and looking what Rozzi and Baldwin are alleging. And he's likely to be thinking, oh, geez, well, that doesn't sound good. I don't want to do anything that's going to lead to some sort of successful appeal later, even if I do win the conviction. You want everything to be by the book with your T's crossed and your I's dotted. You do not want to set yourself up for prisoner of war conditions. Basically drove our client insane before the trial and he was unable to properly defend himself or assist his counsel. You know, that's not that's not gonna be good down the road. You want things done properly. So I think that's very important for people to remember as far as how prosecution is operating in this case or any case.
Why don't we get back to the document and in fact finish it up?
18. From a practical standpoint, it is also worth noting that the raw volume of discovery offered up by the state of Indiana in this case is overwhelming. For example, there exists nearly 3,000 pages of law enforcement reports that need to be examined in this case. In addition, there exists thousands of hours of surveillance video and video interviews of potential suspects, witnesses, and other interested parties. The discovery suggests that law enforcement authorities have processed over 31,000 tips during the course of the investigation, all of which must be reviewed by the defense. Reasonable access to Mr. Allen is necessary as he is needed to assist with the process of reviewing discovery. His current detention situation does not provide this convenience. 19. As a further practical matter, both co-counsel for Mr. Allen are having to drive hours away from their respective law offices in order to talk with Mr. Allen. And the time spent on the road is much more costly for Carroll County taxpayers than housing Mr. Allen in Cass County, where everyone except the Carroll County Sheriff is on board with Mr. Allen being housed during the pendency of his case. And 20. Attorney Rozzi believes an emergency exists and time is of the essence based on the dramatic change in Mr. Allen's condition, including his change in demeanor, change in appearance, and change in his overall mental health status, and respectfully request that this honorable court modify the safekeeping order as permitted by IC 353311-1 and order Richard Allen to be transported and housed at the Cass County Jail or somewhere nearer to his family and lawyers, and to do so without a hearing, or, in the alternative, to conduct a hearing as soon as possible before Mr. Allen is placed in further jeopardy due to his current placement, and also so that Mr. Allen may assist his lawyers in addressing Mr. Allen's mental health concerns, as well as allowing Mr. Allen to participate in the preparation of his defense and for all other just and proper relief in the premises. Respectfully submitted, Bradley A. Rozzi. All right, so they're asking, get him out of here immediately, put him in Cass County. They're continuing to hammer down on the Carroll County Sheriff. I
think it's worth noting there's been a little bit of a subplot throughout this case that we've intended to cover more down the line, where Carroll County and Nick McClelland are having troubles trying to pay for everything.
Yes.
And so I think that is what Rozzi is basically referencing when he indicates that it would save Carroll County taxpayers money, because right now they're paying for the travel time of the attorneys to go see Richard Allen. And if Brad Rozzi just has to literally walk across the street to go see Richard Allen, that's not going to cost the Carroll County taxpayers that much.
As you've said, Rozzi has created an argument here that kind of answers a lot of different questions and speaks to a lot of different angles about why this change is necessary. And I think it's an impressive construction on its face, where you kind of, cancel with the prosecutor doesn't care, and we're being paid to drive across the state. I mean, it's kind of speaking to a lot of different groups here, and I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's very, very well constructed. And it has lots of citations, relevant citations. It's a very good job.
Yeah. And I think it also, it kind of, there's a subset within the people who follow Delphi who frequently allege, without concrete evidence that we've seen at least, that Carroll County is deeply corrupt and mired in corruption, and it's a cover-up. And frankly, we find that a bit ridiculous on its face. But at the same time, Rozzi here is basically tipping to that a little bit. Like, why does the Carroll County Sheriff not want him to be in Cass County? There may be reasons for that we're not aware of. There may be good reasons for that the sheriff can come up with, and it's possible that that's the case, and we're just not going to know about it because of the gag order. But Rozzi is savvy enough to construct a argument here where it's making them look bad. And I think that this should be a warning to people who are going to be in opposition to Rozzi and Baldwin in this situation, that you got to be aware of what you're doing and how it could appear to the public, because if you're not, then you could get caught out in a way that kind of just doesn't look great and makes people ask questions. And if you don't want to facilitate a situation like that, perhaps having greater communication between different law enforcement agencies, the prosecutor's office, and be working more in tandem to ensure that, do we need to fight this part? No? Okay, well, maybe we don't. But maybe we double down on fighting this aspect. And that's a better use of everybody's time. And it's not about trying to not look bad, because, this case isn't being tried in the media. It's being tried by a jury. But at the same time, we do know that the media coverage is intense in this case, and that does shape the public's perception of it. We already know what reporters are running with this story. Those articles will probably be out before we even get this podcast out. And when you're having phrases like prisoner of war, sleeping on a concrete floor, dog kennel situation, then that kind of raises questions about the legitimacy of the whole process. And that's something that I think law enforcement is rightfully going to want to avoid. It's something that the prosecution is certainly going to want to avoid. And it's something that should be taken seriously. And Richard Allen, regardless of whether anybody thinks he's currently, whether you think he's innocent, whether you think he's guilty, whether you are just not sure and you want to hear more evidence, he is afforded rights under our Constitution, and those should be respected.
Along the lines of other reporters and stuff running with this story, we're recording this pretty soon after we first got these documents. So we're still in the process of trying to figure everything out. And I'm going to raise an issue that I haven't mentioned to you before, because I literally just stumbled across it.
Surprise.
Earlier, before we started recording, we got word from a reporter who said that he had been told that the document in question, these motions, were locked and unavailable to the public. And as we've been recording, I've been sitting here periodically refreshing the My Case page to see if there was any subsequent filings related to this. And as I look at the My Case page now, the option to download this motion has been removed.
Oh, God, not again.
So it's entirely possible that this motion, which we know for a fact that other reporters have, may not have been intended to be seen by the public. So if that turns out to be the case, obviously some of the things you were saying earlier about maybe the defense attorneys were trying to communicate certain things to the public through this motion, those would be inapplicable. So I don't know what's going on. I just thought I would throw that in. Oh, my
God, not again.
I just thought I would throw that in. Maybe it's just some sort of glitch, and maybe...
This is not a situation like the Kagan Klein transcripts, guys. Other people had this before us. So we got in there, we downloaded it too, but other people were swarming.
This is maybe more information than you want to know. It's Anya's birthday. We were out having a birthday lunch, and we're going to take the afternoon off, and we got an email from a reporter saying, look at these documents.
So, yeah, we didn't put this out there, but if it's another... Oh, man.
So we'll keep an eye on all of that, and we'll keep an eye on everything else that goes on in this case. But in the meantime, thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Are you kidding me?
Thanks so much for listening to the Murder Sheet. If you have a tip concerning one of the cases we cover, please email us at murdersheet@gmail.com. If you have actionable information about an unsolved crime, please report it to the appropriate authorities.
If you're interested in joining our Patreon, that's available at www.patreon.com/murdersheet. If you want to tip us a bit of money for records requests, you can do so at www.buymeacoffee.com/murdersheet. We very much appreciate any support.
Special thanks to Kevin Tyler Greenlee, who composed the music for the Murder Sheet, and who you can find on the web at kevintg.com.
If you're looking to talk with other listeners about a case we've covered, you can join the Murder Sheet discussion group on Facebook. We mostly focus our time on research and reporting, so we're not on social media much. We do try to check our email account, but we ask for patience as we often receive a lot of messages. Thanks again for listening.